Right. So we are live, folks, and yeah, if you joined us yesterday, sorry about the technical difficulties, but we're back today with Cabo, and this is going to be a good one. So, yeah, Cabo, what's been happening since the last time we chatted, which I think is probably over a year ago, or around about a year, something like that, maybe 11 months.
Yeah, it's been a bit, but yeah, thanks for being flexible with yesterday. First off, appreciate it, and looking forward to answering the questions today. And hopefully, we can get to any folks that had questions yesterday we didn't get to. Hopefully, we can knock those out today as well. But over the last, I guess year or so since we've spoken, I finished up the 2023 or 2022 air show season, and we traveled around. We're on the road about 200 days a year. Flying air shows, going to schools, talking to kids. Been an amazing experience. And since handing over the demo team to Raz, who's the new F-22 demo pilot, I've basically just been back in the squadron teaching. So that's what I was doing before I started the demo job, was teaching in a combat squadron, helping to train and mentor the new F-22 pilots that are coming up. And that's basically what I'm doing right now. So I've been happy to get back into it and doing that.
Awesome. And I've got one question before you guys get your questions in on the side. So get them coming in for Cabo. He flew the F-15C and the F-22. He's currently on that. But what was your last display like in the F-22? Was it like a bittersweet moment, or was it, oh, I want to keep going?
I mean, I've obviously poured a lot of time and effort into it, so it's it was definitely a cool experience, bittersweet. Fortunately for me, I'll be able to do the Australia Air Show in Avalon or in Melbourne, Australia,
Nice.
in February March timeframe. So we have a heritage flight training conference that is a week long, where the F-22, F-16, F-35, A-10 demo pilots get a chance to fly with the warbirds, P-51, P-40, F-86, P-38, those airplanes, and they train for a week. So it's kind of our preseason training, flying heritage flight, and they and do that for that training week in Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And since Raz has never done that, he'll be going to that conference, and the conference is the exact same week as the air show in Australia. So based on that, I'll be in Australia flying demos, and then Raz will be flying demos and training up for heritage flight. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was definitely an amazing experience to do our last, or at least my last, domestic air show in F-22.
Awesome stuff. As you can see, the questions are coming flooding in. So if you just scroll to the top and make your way through, Cabo, that'd be great. And yeah, get your questions in, folks, and enjoy this one.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so we'll just start from the top here, and we'll kind of knock out the questions. So from Shiny Baldy, when F-22s are flying at red flag or other multinational exercises, are they actually in low observable configuration, or are they still lugging around Bloomberg lenses? So it really depends on, I mean, the configuration. I think with any country out there, when you have a top of the line performance aircraft like the F-22, you're not always going to play your cards, or at least have them available to everybody to see. So I would say, in general, there are a lot of things with F-22 that, while many people think they know, we still keep some elements of the F-22, whether it's visually, or sensors wise, kind of to ourselves, to keep a tactical, advantage and edge. And I firmly believe in F-22's capabilities, and I think those advancements we continue to make all the time are really amazing. So the next question from Jin. The F-22 demo uses a lot of post-stall maneuvers. Are any of these usable in practical BFM? Yep, we absolutely use those and train those in BFM, and train, kind of train BFM, and I think they'd be very applicable in combat as well. Next question. Do you feel the lack of a helmet mounted sight like the Jahimics in the F-22 is a disadvantage when doing BFM against a 4 to 4.5 gen aircraft equipped with them? I think there's some disadvantages to not having a helmet. There are ongoing discussions that have been going on for a while in terms of whether we get one or not. And really, what I would say is that we have a finite amount of money, time, and resources in terms of engineers and work and all those things that we can spend on any given airplane. And the F-22 has a lot of amazing advancements, both software wise and hardware wise, that we use. So while there may be visibly things that like the Gemix as an example, you're like, oh, that's lacking, and it's not able to do as well against some other airplane with a helmet-mounted queuing system. I would say that there are some elements that are out there that we're working on that are pretty incredible, and I still feel incredibly confident with an F-22 against anything in that within visual range fight. Any memorable DAC stories? Tons. I mean, there were, I've flown plenty of DAC, been flying airplanes now for 14 to 15 years, at least, Air Force aircraft. And I think one of my most memorable sorties was getting to fly with some buddies of mine who I went to training with in pilot training, and they were actually flying A-10s. So we're escorting them on a scenario, and just being able to fly with somebody that you went to school with, and then see them, kind of part ways after pilot training, and go off, and then come back together and meet up at an exercise and fly a mission together in different airplanes, but on the same team was super cool. Can you describe what it was like doing BFM against A-10? Yeah, it's obviously a very different fight. Different. It's not an airplane designed for air-to-air combat. It's very, very maneuverable based on its speed and its turn performance. But once again, the F-22 is designed for that regime. So the A-10's, formidable threat. I mean, it has a huge gun on the front. So if it does find its way, or if you do find your way in front of it, it could be a bad day for you. But overall, the Raptor's maneuverability is incredible. It's just a completely different fight against, an A-10 versus an F-16 or F-35 based off maneuvering capabilities. And once again, their mission set is, primarily CAS. And they don't train to air-to-air, BFM, or any of those things on a regular basis like we do. Awesome. Next question. Let's see here. Which Russian or Chinese fast jet type would you have the most respect for as an opponent? I mean, I think the way I would answer that is the one I find in combat. It doesn't really matter what Russian, what country it's from, or what platform it is. If you're going to engage in combat with another aircraft, you have to respect it. You have to, it could be the oldest airplane out there, but if you don't understand its limitations, your limitations, and account for those elements, then you're giving yourself I guess you're going to fight at a disadvantage because you're not respecting the threat. So whether it's a very old baseline kind of like lower tier threat, or the newest advanced aircraft from whether Russia or China, in relation to your question, I think all of them require respect, because the end state of that, if you're going to go to aerial combat with somebody, the end state of somebody's not going to come back, right? And when you have those consequences on the table, it's not worth risking that by not respecting your threat or your adversary. All right, next question, John Minter. Have you flown the Raptor at a red flag? And if so, have you got any good stories? Yeah, I've flown red flags quite a bit. So up in Alaska, as well as in Nevada at Nellis Air Force Base. And I think, the Raptor is typically, in terms of performance, it's better than the other airplanes out there. So we oftentimes find ourselves at a higher altitude. And what that means is, we're well above most of the other fighters. So whether it's F-16s, F-35s, they're usually a little bit lower than we are. So I remember, and the F-15 is kind of a similar way, where the F-15 is an air-to-air fighter, and we typically fly a lot higher altitudes. So I remember one of my very first exercises, actually, it wasn't red flag. It was an exercise that we did in the Middle East. And I remember flying and looking down and seeing all these anti-collision beacon lights from all these different airplanes just crisscrossing in the night. And I was like, man, it looks scary down there. I'll hang up here in the 40, 50,000 foot block and be away from those guys. So that was a pretty funny image I won't forget. All right, next from Michael D. Have you ever fought an F-35? Can you kill it from BVR, or do you need to go to the merge? I fought an F-35 in terms of within visual range stuff, so all kind of BV or BFM kind of maneuvering. And I mean, you don't have to just wait to the merge to kill an F-35. There are different tools. Obviously, the F-35 is a great airplane in its own respect and has its own mission sets. But you don't have to answer your question directly. You don't have to wait to the merge to be able to employ or any of those things. Like, they're just, once again. And I'll caveat this whole discussion by saying, when we go fly with F-35s, we are not flying as full up F-35s or F-22s. We are simulating some kind of threat. We're not out there just like, which airplane's better, and show me your best, and I'll show you my best. We're doing this intentionally. We're taking U.S. taxpayer dollars to fly these airplanes, and we want to make sure that it's effective training. So in that light, when we take the training elements we're doing, we make sure it's very deliberate in terms of who are we replicating, what are we doing, how we're going to get the best, desired learning objectives from that sortie. So even if I did fight an F-35 in a long range, beyond visual range setup, likely either myself or the F-35 would be representative or simulating some other aircraft out there. So I don't think that's a question I can, I guess, sincerely answer based off the fact that we are replicating other aircraft out there. All right. Let's see, I lost it here. All right. Any DAC stories between you and an F-35? Some say it's a pig. Some say it's like an F-16 with an F-18, like AOA. What is your experience? Yeah, I mean, I haven't really done any big missions with F-35s in terms of fighting with it on the same side or against it. I've done most of it just within visual range. And when I compare an F-22 and F-35, the performance differences are pretty noticeable. The F-22 is designed to be an air-to-air fighter, and as a result, it's in terms of maneuverability, acceleration, performance, all those things, it's better. But realize the F-35 has amazing sensors and it's optimized for a different mission set. So I can't really comment on the F-16, F-18 like AOA, based on I'm flying a Raptor. They're flying an F-35, so it's just a completely different animal. Does the F-22 have any flying feel like the F-15 does, or do the aerodynamics and flight control systems remove all of this? It's not as pronounced as an F-15. So after flying F-15, the F-15 talks to you a lot more. So when you're increasing the angle of attack, you're feeling the buffet cues in the airplane. You kind of feel the shaking and the increased intensity there. So you feel it a little more, and it's I guess it's more pronounced. In the F-22, it's a little more subtle. It's still there, no doubt, but it's just a little more subtle based on the flight control systems. All right, next question from Joe MD 777. Assuming equally skilled time pilots of the teen series that you have fought against the F-22, which was the toughest in a dogfight, the Eagle, the Viper, or Hornet? I would say the Eagle was probably the hardest one to fight in a Raptor, only because once again that airplane was optimized for air-to-air combat in terms of being able to. It does things really well fast. It also does things very, very well slow. So across the wide spectrum of how a fight could develop, and go down paths of I'm going to go high speed, high energy kind of fight versus a low speed maneuverability kind of fight. When I look at the three different options there, the Viper's a great airplane, and so is the Hornet, but they have different areas where they operate well. And I think the Eagle kind of spans the whole gamut of maneuverability pieces. So yeah, I mean, an Eagle is a great airplane, and I will say that as well. Realize for the Eagle, the Viper, and the Hornet, all three of those airplanes carry their stores externally. We carry all of ours internally. So if we go out there and train against them, we often don't go out there and train with a full combat load in terms of those other aircraft carrying a full combat load of weapons and all the drag that goes into that. So when you think about the F-22 against those airplanes, we're going to fly in our normal combat configuration. The difference is we pay a weight penalty by carrying those extra weapons, but they're paying a weight and a drag penalty. So the performance is pretty negligible when it comes to an F-22 with extra weapons into the bays there. Let's see, next question. Does the F-22 have as good a view out of the cockpit as the F-15? The latter does seem superior, but then I'm hardly an expert. Well, no worries. None of us are experts. We're always learning and trying to figure out more stuff, and we're trying to learn each and every day. I'd say the F-15, you sit higher in the cockpit in relation to the canopy. So in terms of being able to look straight down, you have a little bit better vantage from that perspective. But you also have a canopy bow in front of you. So the visibility in front of you is a little bit more reduced based on the canopy bow being there. It's a two-piece canopy like the F-35 or the F-18. So given that, I'd say the F-22 has better visibility out of the cockpit because you have nothing to obstruct your views at all. Stuart Jobling, hi Cabo. Hey, how's it going? What is the actual future of the Mighty Raptor? Is the demo team possibly going to Royal International Air Tattoo this year? I don't think they're going to RIAT this year. The schedule was released in early December, and RIAT was not on that list. So things obviously could change, but as of now, they're not going to RIAT. In terms of the future, everything I've heard is we're going to keep flying the Raptor for the foreseeable future until something better than the Raptor replaces it, and that timeline is all to be determined. Sweet. Really looking forward to seeing you in F-22 in action, Avalon. Yeah, so I'm really excited about going to Avalon as well. I was able to go to the Avalon show back in 2017. I took jets out from Alaska to the F-22 demo team that was there at the time, and I got to hang out for the week, watch the demonstrations, talk to folks, make friends, and see the whole display. And it was really really cool. That was my second time in Australia, and just great people there. So I'm looking forward to being there. I was able to go in 2019 and flew a very modified display, and then this year I'll be able to go back and do the full display as my last flight and as a demo pilot. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. All right, next question for Paul Barrett. Is the AIM 260 jet on the proper 5th-gen weapon the F-22 has been needing for many years now? Honestly, I'm not super knowledgeable in terms of the capabilities. That obviously has been released in an open source, unclassified setting as the next missile. There are a lot of smart engineers and pilots that are working on that, but I can't really speak to the specifics on it. All right, let's see here. Shahir, hello, Cabo, flying F-22. You have the access to some of the most high-tech classified technical info. Does it distinguish you from other pilots in the Air Force, and does it affect your lifestyle security? I wouldn't say it necessarily distinguishes me. Everybody has their own missions, and I have lots of friends, as an example, that fly C-17s that have done some amazing work. Some of the humanitarian aid stuff, some of the responses they've done to help a lot of people around the globe has been incredible. So everybody has their own thing, and I don't think that having access to classified materials is going to set you apart. And there's no air of superiority that at least that I feel personally because of having access to that. It's just part of my job. It's a required element of what I do, and I have to have knowledge of that and be I guess well versed in that technical data to be able to apply it in my job. In terms of lifestyle security, I haven't personally experienced any limitations to my lifestyle in terms of security. I'll say that much like many people who kind of dedicate themselves to a specific niche career, which I would say flying fighter jets is kind of qualifies as that. I spent a lot of my time working and studying and all those things, so I don't really do a whole lot outside of that because I want to dedicate myself to doing really well at that, and that's important. That's at least important to me. Yeah. All right, Flash Eddie, have you ever seen Tic Tacs? I've seen the Tic Tacs that you put in your mouth and taste delicious, but I've not seen, if you're referring to Tic Tacs, like UAPs or UFOs or whatever the new acronym is. I haven't seen those. No. All right, your flying yesterday was from Eglin, correct? If so, I saw you in the air. I live in Shalimar and am the courier driver for all the Okaloosa government offices. Nice. Well, thank you for doing what you do. Obviously, passing around data, info and material and all that stuff around the areas is an important job as well because we obviously need that to keep everything going. I was not flying at Eglin. I'm actually stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, and I was flying up here for that mission. All right, from Paul, do you have to wear a special G suit for the F-22, or is it the same as other G suits? We do have an advanced version of the G suit, which is actually being used across multiple platforms now. The F-22 is the first platform to use that G suit, and it is incredible. But more planes are starting to use that same G suit system now as well. It definitely is noticeably better than the legacy system. All right. Which was the better air superiority fighter, the F-14D Super Tomcat or the F-15C Eagle Mishap? Which or was the M54 Phoenix a potential threat to the F-15C? So I never fought against a Super Tomcat. I flew the F-15C, and I don't know. My personal opinion is the F-15C is a better overall air-to-air fighter. But that's based off age and updates and all the things that go into it. Like I said, I'm speaking of somewhat out of a place of ignorance because I've never flown the Tomcat. I've never fought against Tomcat. So I can't intelligibly answer the question and say definitively this airplane's better or not because both of them are going to have their own unique qualities. They're going to make them good in certain areas. But from my knowledge, F-15 it still is a pretty darn good airplane. Psychologically, how do you deal with the notion of being best in the world? How to manage expectations and avoid hazardous attitudes? Well, first off, I don't view myself as the best in the world, so um, I guess that kind of answers question two. I learn something new every single day, and I'm surrounded by people that work really hard and dedicate themselves to this job and getting to a place where they are really really good at what they do. But I would say that the three things we look at as kind of the gold standard, or the things we look at to, I guess, live up to, or three words really. It's humble, approachable, and credible. And the first one there is humility. So if you aren't humble with your abilities and what you do in your job, then everything else is kind of not applicable. I haven't met a single fighter pilot that's a very arrogant. When you look at Top Gun, for example, the movie, and you see these very big personalities and these very arrogant, full of themselves kind of people. I have not found a single fighter pilot that truly is that kind of a person. I mean, we may jest back and forth and joke, but in terms of like a sincerely arrogant, full of themselves person that thinks they're better than everybody else in the world, I have not met a fighter pilot that is that kind of personality that I would look at as a really good fighter pilot. Um, the people that I meet that I think are, to take your word, essentially best in the world. The people I think that are the best in the world, in my eyes at least, are the ones that spend the time behind the scenes when nobody's watching. They're studying, they're working hard, getting better at what they do, and they're able to perform under pressure. So they do that with an air of confidence. You have to have confidence to be able to fly fighter jets, and that is an incredibly important element because there are a lot of unknowns, and you have to be confident in your abilities, and that confidence comes from effectively studying and learning and knowing your system, knowing the adversary systems, and being able to apply that effectively in a very short period of time. Things we're doing are happening pretty quickly, so something that's able to be composed in those stressful moments, that puts the time in behind the scenes, like that to me is what quantifies like the best in the world, not the person that's going to be out there boasting about how, I fly fighters and, I'm the best fighter pilot in the world. Like I said, I have no no thoughts or beliefs that I'm the best in the world at all, because every single day I learn something different. And if I were the best in the world, then I would effectively stop learning, and there's really no point to continue at that point. Life is continually evolving. You're always learning. So to think that you're the best in the world, I think is probably a recipe for disaster in terms of actually being successful. All right. Is it not depressing to fly against the F-22 with fourth gen jets? Literally, they do not have a real chance for success. I don't know. It depends on the mission set. There are lots of different things that go into that. In terms of air-to-air platforms, like the F-22 is for sure the best, but we don't do everything. We need them to do things. And once again, we're going to be flying with them. We're all on one team. It's not like we're, like I answered a previous question. They asked, "Hey, have you fought an F-35 and beyond visual range fighting?" And the answer is simply no. Like most of my fighting's been within visual range, but even the beyond visual range stuff, we are all working together as a team. So either on the same team working together, or we are fighting, F-16s, F-15s, F-35s, F-18s, whatever it is, but they're replicating an adversary platform. They're not replicating themselves. They're not going to give us, their best F-35 or F-16 or F-15. So in any case, we're working together or we're replicating something else. So I guess that hopefully that answers the question there. All right, Nathan Fleming, do you know anything about the new NGAD next gen fighter? I don't honestly, other than the fact that they're working on it, and I haven't, I'm not read into that program. I don't know anything about it in terms of what any specifications or what it looks like. No idea. All right, next one. Being stealthy, you cannot seek ground-based radar assistance for en route navigation. How difficult does it become to operate in unfamiliar airspace, especially with radio silence? So there, I'd say the question's making a couple of assumptions that may or may not be valid. And there are plenty of other ways to communicate. So I would say that the question is kind of a leading question. I don't really know if that's necessarily a completely valid statement to answer. Having transitioned from a fourth to fifth gen fighter, what do you think the most important characteristics of a sixth gen fighter will be? I think in any fighter jet, you obviously want more weapons, more gas, all those things. So maybe there's some progress in that front. I don't know. Better sensors, and you just want better, faster, more lethal, more survivable, all those things. So if you think about better sensors, better weapons, better defensive capabilities, better performance. All those things are kind of things that we'd obviously like to see in it. But once again, I don't know much about that airplane at all. The fact that it exists and people work on it, but I don't really know anything beyond that point. One second, lost my place here. Scrolling back. All right. Given the F-22 in dry power nearly equals the F-15 in full AB, can a dry F-22 match an F-15 in full AB? Yeah, so once again, it's going to depend on the configuration of the F-15 as well. I don't have the numbers memorized. I mean, I don't actually think the F-22 in dry power is equal to or more. I think it's still less than the F-15 in full AB. But also realize the F-15 configuration could be with missiles, with external tanks, could be clean, and that's going to change the weight and the drag coefficients dramatically. So it's really going to depend on the configuration of the F-15. Will the F-22 be upgraded to a 5th Gen Plus, or will everything be going into a 6th Gen fighter? I don't even know what a 5th Gen Plus, I don't even know what that is in terms of how to quantify that, given objective characteristics of an airplane that make it 5th Gen Plus. I will say we continue to update the F-22 continuously, whether it's hardware or software improvements that you're not going to see because they're all inside the airplane, all internally kept. But the F-22 continues to be updated every single day. So, I mean, if you want to, I guess, just as in my personal opinion, you compare F-22 from the very first one off the production line to the ones we have now. Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty massive leap in terms of capabilities in those two airplanes. All right, Elaine and Andy, we're looking forward to this. Austin, hello. How's it going? Thanks for joining. All right, if you started your career over right now, would you rather go to UPT or NJET, given you were competitive for both? Personally, I mean, I would not really change the path I went down. I went down the path of NJET and was thankful to get selected for that program. So for those that are unfamiliar with NJET, it's Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. So UPT, or undergraduate pilot training, effectively is the Air Force pilot training program. NJET is a way to complete your pilot training requirements as well. So you still finish with your wings and you're an Air Force pilot. The difference is it's a Euro-NATO program, as it implies, with American presence as well. And it's in Wichita Falls, Texas. So what's cool about that is you get a perspective from other fighter pilots from around the globe that are part of our NATO allies. And the whole point of that program is to train future fighter / bomber / attack pilots. So the focus there isn't to train transport, cargo, helicopter pilots, to train specifically fighter, attack, and bomber pilots. And given the focus that I wanted to pursue, I wanted to go fly airplanes that were fighter attacker aircraft. I wanted to go to NJET to have that exposure and be able to talk to a wide variety of people that have flown different airplanes, different fighter jets, get their perspectives, and be as best equipped as possible to figure out what airplane I wanted to fly. And also the mindset is a little bit different. Fighter aviation versus transport aviation is just different. The way we think about problems, as an example, oftentimes we're in our own airplane, so we are in charge and responsible for that airplane from the time we take off to the time we land. And there's no crew concept. It's just you're in your own airplane and work together as teams. We use communication and contracts and all those things to execute our mission. But we operate autonomously in our own aircraft as part of a bigger team. And it's different than a crew concept mentality, which most transport airplanes are going to have a crew of people. So it's just very different thinking processes. And I wanted to be surrounded and immersed in that kind of culture, knowing that I wanted to go fly jets. Which combat aircraft from the past would you like to have flown? The easy answer for me, or the quick answer for me, is the Mustang. To me, as obviously as an American, the P-51 Mustang was the most iconic fighter of World War II. Surely, probably after that is the F-4, made very famous by Pat Boynton and the Black Sheep Squadron. There's so many amazing stories and history behind those airplanes. But as an Air Force guy, as an American, I think the airplane I would love to fly would be the Mustang. When we fly next to the Mustang in a Heritage Flight program, for example, you can actually hear the Merlin engine from the F-22 cockpit. So as loud as the F-22 is, you can still hear the Merlin engine, which is incredible. And it just gives you the sense of nostalgia, and also the idea that if you could fly a P-51 Mustang, in present day, there's a very high likelihood that that was used either in combat or in training pilots to go to combat, and that level of connection with history to me is meaningful. Would you ever consider switching platforms to the new F-15EX? Probably more flight hours. I don't know how many flight hours we're getting, so I can't speak to that piece of it. I mean, that is a possibility. I'm very happy with the Raptor, and I'll probably continue to fly the Raptor until I'm out of the Air Force. Why is the F-22's top speed limited to less than Mach 2 and not at Mach 2.5 of the F-15C? Is it due to higher drag of the Raptor compared to the Eagle? The Eagle has way more drag than the F-22, so there's way more drag on the Eagle than the F-22. In terms of limited, it's not limited to less than Mach 2. So in terms of performance, yeah, I don't know if this is that's probably just I don't know where you got the stats from, but maybe stats from some place that's just throwing arbitrary numbers out there. All right, from Elaine, how do you feel about the EX? How would you say it would compare to the F-22? The F-15EX, I think, is going to be a great platform. You know, it's already doing a lot of testing. I have friends that are flying it, really enjoy it, and I think it's going to be a very lethal, very survivable airplane. It's going to have some characteristics that make it better. You know, some more gas, longer loiter time. It's going to have some things that make it better in some areas in F-22, but I think overall the F-22 is still a better platform in my mind based on some of the characteristics the F-22 has and some of the modernization we've done to it. But I mean, that's by no means like a spear at the F-15EX. I think it's a phenomenal airplane. All right, are they going to keep the Raptor until NGAD, or is the talk about it being phased out by 2030 just conjecture? I think, you know, if we take the story of the A-10, I mean, I think 10 to 15 years ago they said they're going to kill the A-10 and get rid of the A-10, and here we are in 2023 and they're still flying A-10. So you know, anything beyond the next couple of years, I would say, is complete conjecture because it can just change so quickly. And the F-22, you know, having built a small fleet of them, is a phenomenal airplane, and there's really no need to get rid of the airplane. So I think we'll see how the future goes and where it takes us. But I think 2030 is just too far out to predict what they're going to do by that point in time. It could change a couple times over again. All right. Hi, have you fought the Typhoon? If you have, how did the F-22 fare? I have not personally fought an F-20 or a Typhoon in the F-22 or fought against it in the F-22. So I can't really specifically speak on that other than the fact that I know the Typhoon and the Rafale, both those kind of like frontline European fighters are great airplanes and have some characteristics that are awesome. But, you know, I still think the F-22 in terms of performance is pretty incredible. I haven't flown another airplane that I've seen or flown with or flown against or any of those things to really have the same characteristics and performance as the Raptor. I'm very, very happy with the airplane. It flies incredibly well. And it's very intuitive for the pilot. So he or she can spend more time focused on the mission as opposed to the flying of the airplane. It doesn't really limit you at all. You know, I want to do, you know, let's say I want to, you know, climb this altitude or turn this direction or turn this fast, or it doesn't limit you at all. It's pretty incredible. All right, less specific to the F-22, more general training question. When training in BVR, beyond visual range, how do pilots systems simulate missile shots, and how do you determine hits without physically launching anything? So there's some internal software that we use, as well as other airplanes use something similar. And then we also have people that are controlling the fight on the ground, so they actually can use user tracks. So we have ways of tracking the airplanes during training scenarios, and they can use that to simulate missiles and call things effective or not effective. But ultimately, it's going to come down to some software systems we have for training specifically. Let's see. Given the F-15 usually carries 1 or 2 drop tanks, how often is it for the F-22 to carry tanks? And is its fuel fraction better or worse than that of the F-15? So it physically carries more fuel than the F-15 without tanks. Now, if you start adding tanks to the F-15, the F-15 will carry more gas than the F-22. We don't oftentimes carry tanks. It's mostly just for cruising. You know, like we're going to take the jets from one place over a long distance to another place. That's when we'll carry them, but we don't really carry them very often. All right, given the F-15, or sorry, that's the same one. What are your thoughts on F-23? I'd love to know more about it. I mean, it looked like a super cool airplane. It seemed like, in terms of at least what I've heard, just watching videos or talking to folks, it seemed like it was an incredible airplane. But obviously, we never went forward with the procurement or development of that airplane. So I don't know specifics on the capabilities or where that could have gone. And we take the YF-23 and we say, okay, we're going to use that YF-23 from the 80s when we competed against the YF-22. And then the F-22 has subsequently, been developed over the last, 2+ decades, 3+ decades. So I think it'd be a super unfair comparison to compare the current F-22 to the YF-23. I think if the YF-23 had 30 years of development, we'd see a completely different airplane as well. But I have no doubts that it would have been a pretty awesome airplane. All right, for Michael D, in your opinion, is dogfighting still relevant in today's air combat environment, or is it going to be extremely rare? I would say, I guess the answer to that question, I turn to history, and I think history is a great teacher of lessons for present and future days. And people thought in Vietnam when missiles came out, we're never going to get into a dogfight again. We're going to use missiles. We're going to kill adversaries, far range. And as an example, they built the F4 without a gun on it initially, had to add a gun on it later on because they're like, man, we still need to have a gun on this airplane because the missiles aren't working as well as we'd like them to do or like them to work. So I just look at those experiences and I look at history to try to learn lessons for the future. And if I'm going to take history lessons and apply them to the future, I would say that I think dogfighting is still relevant. And I think that any fighter jet needs to be able to do that because if everything fails and all you're left with is your platform and a short range weapon like a gun, as an example, you need to be able to use it effectively against whatever adversary is out there. All right. What is on your wish list for a 6th-gen air superiority fighter? So we answered this question a little bit ago, but in summary, it's like better systems, better weapons, better performance, longer range, like those kinds of things. So does it make me more lethal? Does it make me more survivable? And are the sensors and weapons better? It's kind of the three things I would say for me. Have you ever been up against the RF Typhoons? How'd it fare? I haven't. Again, I haven't fought against the Typhoon. Fought against the Rafale, but not the Typhoon. And not in a Raptor. So I can't specifically speak on the RF Typhoon compared to a Raptor in a visual engagement. But I mean, the Typhoon obviously is a very capable fighter jet, and I think now we get it's compared to an F-16, for example, it's probably more capable in a lot of ways than an F-16. So now we get more close to parity in terms of platforms, and now we start looking at the differences between pilots, like who can max perform their airplane more than the other pilot, know which areas are exploitable, which areas are areas you can capitalize upon to really take advantage of the capabilities of your platform. So I think that's where we start getting discussion of pilots. We do have an RAF Typhoon exchange pilot here who's here, and he's flying F-22s with us. And we send folks there to fly Typhoons. So he would probably honestly be like the best person to ask that question, but I'm not entirely sure. All right, is there a procedure to cope with an F-22 weapons bay door becoming jammed, locked, or is that just not an issue? I mean, there are simple things you can do to fix that. I've not per se an issue where like it didn't resolve itself, so it's pretty darn reliable. All right, I'm assuming the F-22 have JHMICs. Is it the same system as the Eagle, Hornet, or vastly better? Awesome. You say great Q&A. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The F-22 does not have JHMICs, actually. So there are various kinds of helmet-mounted queuing systems, JHMICs being one of them, Scorpion being another one. You have all these different, like BAE makes a helmet as well. So we don't have a helmet currently. There's other systems and sensors we use in the airplane that are pretty incredible. I think a helmet, obviously, more equipment, more capability is always better. But I think there are some things we have that are pretty good. But to answer your question, we don't have it, so I can't really compare it to the Eagle Hornet since we don't have one. Stuart, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I hope you take care as well, and happy New Year to everybody on the chat here. Let's see, best TDY. I'd say my best TDY. So TDY temporary duty. Best TDY was to go to Tampa. So I'm from Tampa, Florida originally, and I got to fly an air show at my hometown, and that was really cool. So it was neat because I grew up going to that air show. I met the F-15C demo pilot when I was 11 years old. We took a picture, didn't think anything of it, and then 12 years later, he was one of my instructor pilots teaching me how to fly F-15Cs. I had to fly with him for a period of time. And then, him and I continued to keep in touch now that, I did the demo job. So our lives have paralleled each other so many times. So being able to go home, see family, have a lot of my friends and family come out and watch the show. Screech, the demo pilot back then, came out with his family and watched the show. So I think overall, it was just a really cool full circle moment for me. And I really enjoyed that one. Let's see, which aircraft was your childhood love that prompted you to be a fighter pilot? The F-15C. I just love that airplane. Even now, I've got a soft spot in my heart for that airplane. It was my first love in terms of airplanes are concerned, and I just love the airplane. It's great. Let's see here. Typhoon, Rafale, Gripen. Which one do you find toughest to fight? Both BVR and within visual range. Let's see here. So flown against, I think all those three platforms, I flew against them when I was flying F-15. So I can't really give you a great example, having not flown the Raptor against those platforms. So I flew the F-15C against the Typhoon, or not the Typhoon, sorry, the Rafale and the Gripen. I've flown with the Typhoon on exercises, and I've flown against it. But once again, when we're fighting against these platforms, the Typhoon, Rafale, and Gripen are all, coalition partners. Like, they're owned by countries that we're all on the same team with. And when we fight each other, we're not going out there and just saying, "Hey, well, show me your best stuff. I'll show you my best stuff." It's not how that works. We usually go out there as a team, and we're either fighting on the same team with the Typhoon, Rafale, or Gripen, and we're fighting against other platforms. They could be Typhoons, Rafales, and Gripens on the bad guy, the adversary side, or the aggressor side. But they're going to be out there replicating something else. They're not going to replicate, a Typhoon on the adversary side is not going to be flying to the full capabilities of Typhoon. Same for Rafale, same for Gripen. They're going to replicate something out there. And as a result, a lot of the questions have been asked thus far regarding which one's the toughest one to fight. We just don't do that very often in terms of, especially within the beyond visual range stuff. Within visual range, it could be, it's a different story, honestly. But within or beyond visual range, we're replicating something out there. Let's see. So I fought against the Rafale. That's a great airplane. The Gripen. I think the challenging part of Gripen, it's I didn't realize how small the airplane is. Having flown F-15s and F-22s, they're really big. The F-22 and F-15 are really big airplanes. So when you get used to flying against those airplanes, you look out, and they're a couple miles away. You can see them clear as day. Whereas a smaller airplane like the Gripen is a little bit more challenging to see. But yeah, like I said, I haven't fought against them within visual range in a Raptor, so I can't give you an informed opinion on that. Let's see here. Last flight ever. Which type do you take for a final fling? So it's going to depend on what the schedule shows. So I'm just, the way I look at it is I'm going to go and support the flying schedule in the squadron. So I'm teaching in the 27 Fighter Squadron. I'll go off somewhere else and I'll support their schedule. So if it's a training sortie where I'm teaching somebody, or if it's whatever, I'm just going to fly whatever they need to support the squadron schedule. To me, I mean, the importance of a Finny flight or a final flight is really just being there with the people that you've known for a long time and be able to fly with together, and then sharing that experience, that moment with them. And the type of mission to me is kind of irrelevant. It's really just a matter of the symbolism of being able to fly with them and hang out with them one last time. All right, regarding mid-air refueling, what is the main challenge you have to cope with? Is it easier in the F-22 regarding other aircraft because of technical equipment? The F-22 is pretty smart. So when you actually open the air refueling door, it does change the flight control characteristics, and that makes it a little bit easier to refuel. The hardest thing you have to deal with in terms of refueling is bad weather at night. That's really challenging. And especially if you're flying in certain areas where you're over hostile areas, people are going to maybe turn lights off. If it's dark, they don't want to be seen. So imagine, it's pitch black outside. The airplane is completely, darkened. So you have a very difficult time seeing it. And then you're refueling, potentially all of those things combined, plus in the weather. So those can be very challenging experiences. But the nice thing is there are lights underneath the belly of the refueler, so you can typically see those. And then you're also in communication with the folks on the airplane that control the boom, so you can talk to them and provide you some information as you're refueling. But think about a B-52 or a C-17 refueling, I mean, they're going to be on the boom taking a lot of gas for a long period of time. For us, we're on the boom for 5 to 10 minutes. It's not very long, depending on how much gas we need. So it takes a lot of concentration, but at the same time, it's a pretty short dwell time. All right, what was your favorite air show to fly at? It was Tampa. So, like I said, going back home and seeing family and kind of flying at the show that I grew up going to was probably the coolest one for me. From Paul, what is the max G's the F-22 can pull? Because when you do that takeoff and just go vertically, it's amazing to see. Thank you. It does. Yeah, the F-22, it just does things that surprise me every day. It's pretty awesome. In terms of max G's, it's over 9. Like every aircraft out there, as the fuel weight changes, we burn gas, the center of gravity is going to change, and the center of gravity is going to affect how many G's you can pull to make sure the aircraft is safe and controllable and all those things. So it's over 9. It's going to depend based on the fuel weight. At Red Flag, are you carrying inert weapons? Yeah, we'll carry training weapons at Red Flag. And let's see here. Sorry, one second. We'll carry training weapons, and then sometimes we'll carry inert weapons, or we'll drop. So if we're dropping bombs on the range, as an example, we'll carry inert weapons and drop those as well. Will your aircraft be getting new coatings, or is there just testing? I don't know what the future of that is. I'm sure you guys have probably seen pictures of the F-22 with different coatings and whatnot. But there are some engineers and pilots that are working really hard, and maintainers working really hard to test out new stuff. And it's not just the Air Force, also the Navy is doing that as well, and the Marine Corps. So we'll see what they come up with. And at this point, it's just all testing stuff. All right. What squadrons were you a member of when you flew the F-15? And which squadrons have you flown the F-22 with? And what amount of experience in air-to-air arena would you like? Let's see. And with your amount of experience in the air-to-air arena, would you like to be an aggressor? John, thanks for the question. So the F-15, I was in the 114th Fighter Squadron, which is in Klamath Falls, Oregon. That was the training squadron. Then I flew with the 44th Vampire Bat Squadron out of Kadena in Okinawa, Japan. Then F-22, I flew with the 43rd, which is the training squadron at Eglin. At the time, it was Tyndall. And then I flew the 90th Fighter Squadron up in Alaska. And then now I fly. When I first got to Virginia, I flew with the 94th, the Hat and the Ring Squadron, the SPADs. And then the squadron I fly with now is the 27th Fighter Squadron, which is actually the oldest and the finest fighter squadron in the Air Force. Actually, is the oldest fighter squadron in the U.S. Air Force, which is pretty cool. In terms of your last question, would I want to be an aggressor? I don't have any particular desire to do that. I mean, they do an incredibly important job because they're training assets and aids for us developing our tactics and practicing them. But personally, I mean, if there are F-22 aggressor platforms out there, I'd be maybe interested. But I'm honestly pretty happy with F-22 and don't really have any desire to switch airplanes. All right, is there one fact about the F-22 that you can legally share with us that's not that well known about the F-22? I don't know. It seems like based on questions, you guys have a lot of knowledge with F-22, so I'm kind of grasping for straws here to figure out what exactly I can think of. Yeah, I'll think about that question. If I can think of something as we continue to answer questions, I'll bring it back up. But I can't think of anything offhand right now. All right, from Zach, have you ever taken the F-22 out past Mach 2? I personally haven't. There's really no need to in terms of like our what we do with the airplane. So I personally have not. How challenging was it to change tactics from F-15 to F-22? It wasn't terribly challenging, only because the F-15 and F-22 both being air-to-air platforms. The mission sets in terms of the overall missions and like the I guess the structure, the communication, a lot of the contracts and thought processes are very, very similar. Yes, there are different tactics between the two airplanes, but that really is just repetition. So like everything else in the world, if you just keep doing it enough times, you'll eventually get it. And I don't consider myself particularly smart person. I have to learn and practice things a lot, and it just was a matter of like taking time. And a really good friend of mine the other day, we were talking about some future things, and he was like, "Man, I'm just too dumb to quit." I'm like, "Yep, that's really all it takes. Like you just keep working no matter what hurdles are in your way, what setbacks you have. As long as you're willing to keep putting in the work and keep staying dedicated to the task, I think you'll be able to get it. So I wouldn't say it was terribly challenging; it just required time and effort. Let's see. I heard some F-35s get killed against F-22s and red flag. Stephen, thanks for the question. So once again, they very well may have gotten killed against F-22s and red flag, but we don't fight F-35s versus F-22s. Full up F-22 versus full up F-35. That's just not what we do. Red flag is a training event, and we simulate different adversary aircraft out there. So if the F-35 shot down an F-22 in red flag, the F-22 is most likely replicating another airplane to be a training platform, not necessarily fighting in their best abilities. Can you describe the most fun flight you've ever had in both F-15 and F-22, please? The F-15, let's see, I was in exercise in Korea. I got to fly with three of my best friends in the F-15, and we were just doing a big mission with the South Korean Air Force, Republic of Korea Air Force, and that was awesome. Those are people, like one guy, I grew up down the street from him when we were young kids. The other guys I went to the academy with, one of them I'm going to keep working with in the future. One of them I went through pilot training, our intro to fighter fundamentals course together, and our first 3-year F-15 assignment and the F-15 school together. So I showed like three of my really close friends all in the same formation with me, and we got to fly, and that was an awesome experience. The F-22, I would say, I don't know, like I think I go back to the answer of an air show MacDill in Tampa, Florida, because that was, a show that was in front of my family and friends and in my hometown at a show that I used to grow up going to, which is pretty cool. Let's see here. All right, David Couch. Did you find a big difference with having thrust vectoring in the F-22 compared to the F-15C? Yeah, the F-22 is just way more maneuverable than the F-15C in terms of like that post-stall regime where you're now effectively not flying anymore. The airplane is still controllable and maneuverable. The F-15C is not that maneuverable comparatively to the F-22, based on some of the limitations with flight controls as well as the thrust vectoring. All right. Do you think lack of FLIR and JHMX is a problem for the F-22? Not necessarily. So I think more is better in a lot of respects in terms of capabilities and sensors, but we still have a lot of other things that we don't, that we keep to ourselves and work on and develop with software, hardware that are pretty incredible. So we love to have more stuff, but everything is a function of time and money. All right, let's see here. With no Cabo, is it more likely in the F-22 to get spatial disorientation than it is in F-15? And similarly, have you ever been spatially D'd? That's a great question. So I would say that, I guess there's more likelihood for you to get spatially disoriented in F-22 based on Ocampo, but at the same time, like I've not personally been spatially D'd, spatially disoriented. There may be like a moment or two where you're like, which way is up? And then your training kicks back in and you look at your sensors, and that's not when you're flying around this, clear blue skies. It's like you're in the weather at night and you don't have any visual acuity or visual references to be able to discern where the horizon is. But then you rely upon your training, go back to the sensors and displays that are telling you all those critical navigation functions. So I personally haven't had an issue with it. And I do think, maybe there's some benefit to the Campo in that regard specifically. I also think it really depends on your seating position, so how are you seating? If you're, F-15, F-22 seats are pretty much vertical. So you're sitting as if you're in a chair, which kind of gives you a 90-degree reference point, of where the horizon is, where it should be, where your eyes are looking, and all those very small, like biomechanical elements of how you're sitting, what your perceptions are. Like those things are all going to go into your susceptibility to spatial disorientation. All right. Vaclav, hi Cabo, hello. You flew both F-15 and F-22. Can you compare them in terms of cockpit buffet during maneuvering? And was the F-15 buffet beneficial for you as a pilot? So we answered this question a little bit earlier, but I'll give you a quick synopsis of the answer. The F-15 does buffet a lot more than the F-22. They both do, talk to you in terms of feel and buffeting cues. And as a pilot, I would always prefer to have more feedback than less, so you can kind of understand where you are in relation to energy and maneuvering potential. So I do like the F-15 Buffet a little more because it talks to you more than the F-22, but the F-15, the F-22 is still plenty fine. All right, the two new F-15EX are at Eglin. What have you seen? Heard about the Eagle 2? Would you like to fly it? So yeah, I have friends that fly the airplane and are testing it and developing cool stuff. And it sounds like it's going to be an awesome airplane. If they offer that to me, it depends on what other options are out there. Like I'd prefer to just keep flying the Raptor. I've been able to get a lot of experience and a lot of work and time has gone into flying F-22. So to me, having that skill is important because then I can continue to maintain my ability to teach and instruct in this airplane. All right. Hello. How's it going? Let's see here. According to Top Gun Maverick, fighter pilots can afford Mustangs, so the opportunity is there. Thanks for giving me up your time to answer questions. Much appreciated. I think it's funny. So the Tom Cruise's P-51 Mustang actually is at the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California, and that's where the airplane stays. It's pretty funny. So if you go to the museum, there's actually a little placard there, and it goes through the math of what is a Navy captain or an Air Force colonel, same in terms of rank. What does that paycheck look like, and how much did Tom Cruise have to actually save to get a Mustang based on his military salary? He would have to serve for a very, very long time to afford a Mustang. So I don't know if it's quite affordable for an Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps fighter pilot to buy a Mustang on our salary.
So, Cabo, I'm just going to jump in there. We got 5 minutes left, folks. So, if you want to answer maybe a couple of questions that you can see on the side there, and then we'll wrap up, folks.
Sweet. I'm going to get back to, I think I lost my place here. Let me get back to the last question. All right. Does the Raptor's cockpit feel significantly smaller compared to F-15, especially headroom-wise? It is smaller. I don't know if it's significantly smaller when I compare an F-15 to an F-16. Pardon me. Appreciably different between F-15 and F-16, and even the F-22 compared to F-16. There's an appreciable size difference there. The headroom in the F-15, it's a bubble canopy, so it kind of goes out a little more and is a little bit higher off the airplane. So I think you do have more freedom of movement in the F-15. But honestly, I think a lot of that benefit comes into the fact that the F-15 has a center stick, so you can fly with your right hand, your left hand. You can turn all these directions, but in the Raptor, you're pretty much your stick's on your right hand side, your throttle's on your left hand side. So you're kind of cemented in that position. You can turn your neck and your head, but you can't really pivot in the airplane as much because you can't fly with both hands, given the cockpit setup. So I think there's more room in the F-15, but I don't think it's detrimental by any means in the F-22. Okay, what do you think about the Rafale, Typhoon, and Gripen and zero platforms? You kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but I think they're all good in their own respects. I haven't personally flown any of them, so I can't give you a well-educated opinion on that. What do you think? Will F-15EX have relevance in air-to-air fighting BVR as its radar cross-section is very big? I think they will. The radar cross-section, it's funny, right? You watch videos and read comments and listen to chats or whatever it is, and people are like, oh, the Su-35 is the best airplane ever. You're like, well, the radar cross-section of the Su-35 is probably the same as the F-15. So if we're going to make the argument that the Su-35 is the best platform ever or whatever it is, I'm not saying you specifically, I'm saying people in general are making these statements, then if that argument holds true in terms of people's opinion, then I would say the F-15X is probably equally good, if not better than. What advice would you give to a fellow F-16 pilot in a fight against F-22? Would the Viper stand a chance in a rate fight on the deck? So in terms of F-16, I think really and truly, the only game the F-16 has against F-22 would be a high energy rate fight. Because the F-16 is a great performing airplane, lots of thrust, especially when you have no external stores on the airplane. It's a great airplane. But when you get slow, it's not going to have a chance against F-22. So, I would say the better game plan would be do something in the rate, high energy kind of plan, because I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of a chance in those slow speed fights. Let's see here. Can you please describe BVR exercises against other low-level aircraft? I don't know. We just go to our tactics, we modify things and train against them. But once again, we don't train against other, like, F-22, F-35, etc. We don't train against them, and they're and as them replicating F-22, F-35, we're training against them as them replicating some other platform out there. Is there any system in the F-22 to help you if you start getting G-lock? So if you actually, not if you start getting G-lock, but if you actually do G-lock or G-induced loss of consciousness, there is a system in the F-22. It's in the F-16 as well. I think F-18. I don't know whether systems have it or whether platforms have it, but there's a system called Auto Ground Collision Avoidance System, or Auto GCAS, and that's going to basically help you recover the aircraft. So it's a way to, if the plane perceives it's going to impact the ground, it's going to recover the airplane from a dive, and then wait for you to regain consciousness. So there's a system we use to keep pilots safe in that regard. Let's see here. Elaine, would you like to do an exchange to UK to try the Typhoon? Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome. I don't know. I'm happy to do exchange anywhere. Flying airplanes is always cool, and the Typhoon seems like a great airplane. Let's see here. What is the rank of the most senior F-22 pilot you've flown with or seen? They've had 3-star general over Syria apparently, and 4-star general flying over the U.S. in training. We do have senior officers that fly F-22s. I did meet the 3-star that you're referencing. He's a 4-star now. Yeah, I think one of the really nice things is, I think at that level, you've been in the military for 30, 40 years, so you're very far removed from the folks that are, 4 years in the squadron, doing the day-to-day mission of the squadron. So I think it's a great opportunity for senior leaders to still fly and still kind of get the, they're like probably 10, 20 different levels of people in between those, that brand new squadron pilot to the 4-star general. So be able to cut out all the middlemen and go directly to the squadron and see what's happening, learn about what the culture's like and what problems they're facing, what concerns they have. As a senior leader, I think is important. If you're going to lead an organization, understanding the challenges your people face via communication, via interaction, all those things are important. And I think that is a great benefit of having, the general officers fly with us.
So, Cabo, I'm going to jump in there, sorry. If you can answer...
I have F-15C versus Typhoon. Who wins? I don't know. I haven't fought against Typhoon in a within visual range fight. Have you refueled from a drone? Nope. I think that's just the Navy. If you had to pick one improvement on the F-22, what would it be? I don't know if I could pick one in priority order, but I mean, yeah, more weapons, more gas, better sensors, like basically what I want the next airplane to have. Which is the best air-to-air missile in your opinion? The one that kills the bad guy. So rapid fire questions right now here. What is the optimum speed for dogfighting and turn fights for your F-22, if you're allowed to say? It's going to vary. The fights change dramatically. So what kind of fight are you in? What's your fuel weight? What kind of platform are you fighting against? There are so many questions that go into that, or so many, I guess, elements that go into that question. Elaine, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Do you fly any civilian airplanes for the fun on the side? I do. I fly general aviation aircraft as well, both tail draggers and kind of general aviation standard kind of Cessnas, Diamonds kind of deal. All right, I think we all wrapped up.
Yes, I'm just going to jump in there, Cabo, because I have one question to wrap up this Q&A. How many times have you seen Top Gun?
I'm nervous now.
How many times have you seen Top Gun, and what did you think of it? Maverick, obviously, Top Gun Maverick.
I was Top Gun too. I think I've seen it twice now. The first time we watched it was with the team. That was in New York. We were at an air show. We just went to one of the IMAXs, one of the super sweet theaters, very immersive kind of deal. And it was super cool, yeah. And then my roommate hadn't seen it, so I watched it. We watched that as well here at the house, and it was pretty cool to check it out. I think the movie was really well done. When you think about the challenge that they undertook, right? The director, the production team, the director of aerial photography, Kevin LaRosa and his team, all those guys that spent time putting this film together. They had a really daunting task. How do you take a movie from 1986 that was, I would say, arguably the most iconic fighter jet movie ever made, and then how do you make a sequel to that? That's most sequels are terrible, and like they're like, well, not only are we going to make a sequel to a movie, but we're making a sequel to like the best fighter jet they've ever made.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a super challenging task, and I think they honestly knocked it out of the park. I think the photography, the the director of photography in terms of like all the aviation scenes and like all the things that went into that. We actually had to meet a lot of the guys that were involved in that movie
Oh,
making the
wow.
process at the Airshow conference this past December.
Cool.
And so here and there recounted the whole deal. I think that, like I said, the aerial photography was incredible. The storyline I thought was great because they pulled in a lot of elements from the first movie, but it wasn't so overt that you're like, this is just a remake of the first one. It was like
Yeah.
there's a progressive storyline, but it kept in ties, like the motorcycle, like, all these little elements. You're like, oh, okay, I got it. And that was super cool. So I thought they did a great job with the movie. Um, and I don't know, was the TV show ER, was that a thing in the UK?
Yeah, it is, but I wouldn't watch it. But it is a thing. Yeah, my girlfriend watches it, so yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of like doctors, right? Like doctors probably watch ER and they find it entertaining, like there's entertainment value, but they look at their career and they're like, well, this is nothing like my actual profession, like it's just
Yeah.
right. It's just like I'm watching it for entertainment value, and it's same with Top Gun. I watch it, and I'm like, man, um, the movie is super entertaining. There are a lot of embellishments and a lot of things that are nothing like flying fighters in a squadron, at least in the Air Force. Maybe the Navy's different. I don't know, but like I don't ever go into movies like that regard that are I guess about aviation, about fighter aviation specifically. I don't ever go watch those movies and expect to get something like valid out of the movie. It's like, oh, I do this for a living,
Yeah, of
and I
course.
realize real life and Hollywood are different. So people have asked me like, oh, was the movie realistic? Do you guys actually do this? I'm like, no, it's Hollywood. Like
Yeah,
they're
of
gonna
course.
embellish the story. I think I did. Yeah, but I thought it was fantastically entertaining.
Yeah, you go to get entertained. Like you can watch a documentary if you want to watch the real thing. Yeah, you're there to be entertained. So, yeah, that's a great insight from your sense as a fighter pilot.
Yeah,
But Cabo, thank you very much for coming on the show.
yeah,
It's been a pleasure, and all went smoothly tonight, guys. So thank you very much to everyone who joined us. And yeah, Cabo, where can we find you online and the F-22 demo?
yeah. So first off, yeah, if you look at F-22 demo team on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, you'll be able to find the team, all of their updates and what they're doing. So I'm no longer on the team, but that'll have their current schedule, what shows they're doing. So if they do, I know there was a question about Riot earlier. If they do add Riot, for example, it'll be posted there immediately, I'm sure. Um, and so I definitely recommend following at F-22 demo team. And then the new demo pilot is at Raz Larson, Razzlarson. And so he took over for me. I trained him up for the last couple months, and he's phenomenal. He's a great person. So that to me was probably the most important piece. Was like, is this the right person for the job?
Yeah.
I can teach anybody to fly the F-22 demo, like with enough practice, enough experience, and whatever. Like I can do that. But it's really like, is this person the right fit for the job? And he's a great person. So I'm very, very excited for him and the team. They're going to do really well. And then for me, it's just at Cabo Gunderson on Instagram. I don't have any other platforms. So if you find some at Cabo Gunderson or Cabo Gunderson page on Facebook, it's somebody else, like pretending to be me. It's so Instagram's the only page I have. But yeah, feel free to check out the team and Raz as they continue to crush it this year.
Absolutely, and yeah, I'll link everything in the description below to the team and also Cabo's Instagram. Go and check it out; it's amazing, some amazing photos and videos. But Cabo, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you to everyone who joined us for the amazing questions. So yeah, cheers, Cabo.
Awesome, cheers! Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
See ya.